Welcome to the Touch MBA Admissions Podcast. Do you need help figuring out which schools to apply to or how to get into the world's top MBA programs? Hey, you're not alone. Join thousands of others on this podcast and on our site, touchmba.com, as they seek the admissions edge. And now, here's your host, Darren Joe.
Hey guys, it's Darren here, and welcome to the Touch MBA podcast, where we interview admissions directors and students from the world's top business schools so that you'll be better prepared when you apply to figure out which schools fit you best and to get in those target schools of yours. This week, I spoke with Dean Nordholm, who came to Touch MBA last fall. He was a listener of the podcast. He came to us to get some school selection help. And what a journey for Dean. He applied to 4 top schools and recently was admitted to Northwestern Kellogg. So in this episode, what we do is we discuss Dean's positioning strategy. We also dig deep into, which schools he applied to and in which rounds. I think this is such an important part of the application process in terms of figuring out how many schools you're applying to, figuring out which schools you're applying to in round 1 and in round 2 to maximize your chances of getting into your dream schools and winning scholarship funding. So we haven't discussed this yet on the podcast, and we do so in detail on this one. So I think you'll find it very useful. One of Dean's big tips is to build up your applicant network, to get as many eyes on your application as possible, whether those are colleagues or friends or bosses. And it's something we've tried to do here at touchmba.com/course to help you as well. You can find an applicant community there where you can ask me questions in the forum. You can also ask other students, successful students, what they've done. So go check that out at touchmba.com/course so you don't apply in a vacuum. And of course, if you need school selection help, that's what we do. We'd be glad to help you out for free, as we did for Dean. Go head over to touchmba.com to get some free feedback on your profile. All right, let's get straight to the episode. I'm so excited to have our next guest on the show because we have, listeners from all over the world, and one of them was admitted to Northwestern Kellogg, one of the top schools in the world, and we're going to really break down his story and get into what he thinks more applicants should do. So it's my pleasure to introduce Dean Nordholm. Dean, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Darren.
Dean, could you give us just a quick introduction? Tell us a little bit about your background and what you're doing for work right now.
Yeah, so I graduated in December 2011 from a top 5 engineering school with an engineering degree. Went to work for a management consulting firm. It's actually a very small management consulting firm in the procurement space, which is really a great opportunity there. I work with some of the smartest people I know, which is really cool, and I get to learn a ton from them. And so there I've been working on a combination of logistics projects and sort of general procurement and management consulting type projects. It's been a really great experience, but I decided a couple of years into my time at that firm that I wanted to go back and get my MBA in order to sort of launch me into a career more focused around logistics and supply chain. And I think the MBA would give me the platform to be a leader in that space, which was something that I didn't feel like I was going to get if I had continued working at the company.
And how many years of work experience did you have before you applied?
I will have just over 3.5 when I start at school. So I had right at 2.5, 3 when I was going through the application process.
I think a lot of candidates, they come to Touch MBA, and one concern I hear all the time is, I don't feel like my profile is that different. I'm applying to these top, M7 schools, and I just don't feel special. I haven't started a nonprofit, I'm not saving the world. I was wondering how you presented yourself, if you wouldn't mind sharing, to the schools you applied to. And we'll get into that in just a second. But I was wondering if you had any tips or advice there.
When I was going through my application process, I found there were a lot of questions trying to get to really, why are you applying to get an MBA and what do you bring that's special? And to be honest, prior to the application process, I wouldn't have had a good answer for that. And so going through the application processes for me helped me get to that. But the core of it, what it came down to me, was I tried to focus in on what is that thing that I enjoy doing at work that everybody else runs away from. And that's likely the thing that I'm bringing to a business school. It's sort of my unique angle, is that thing that I enjoy doing that nobody else does.
I absolutely love that. So would you mind sharing what that was for you, or what that is for you?
Yeah, for me, it was really two things. The first one was logistics and supply chain. I like finding out how things get from one place to another, why they go to the different places they go to, how do you decide how to move them between those two places. That really got me excited. And then the other thing that gets me excited that most people don't enjoy is I found that I have a passion for analytics, data analytics. I like dealing with large data sets where we're trying to get a solution from an inordinate amount of data, where it's just crazy problem where you've just got to start to dive in there and digest ridiculous amounts of data. I found that those two things were things that I really enjoyed at work that others tended not to like.
Yeah, and then you had to tie those things that you liked that other people maybe not like so much to your future post-MBA goals. Right. And when you came to Touch MBA, you mentioned that you wanted to get into supply chain, whether working in industry or working for a consulting firm. And did you stick with that theme in your application?
Yeah, I did. That was one thing that I found both through listening to some of your podcasts as well as some of the research I'd done, was that these schools aren't looking for people who sort of have an idea of what they want to do. The schools are looking for people who are passionate and are going to go in and do something and have a clear vision for what they want to do. I found through the application process that I had to spend a lot of time, just sitting down thinking about, hey, what do I want to do? I did actually, I'll go ahead and call out now. I applied to Stanford's GSB, and I found their essay was particularly helpful to me in terms of helping me understand what I wanted to do. I didn't end up even getting an interview there, but I felt like that essay really helped me drill into what was it that I was really passionate about.
I can't wait to talk about school selection and rounds, because I think that's really the heart of our conversation. Oh, I should mention that Dean wrote a great article about his applicant journey, and it's on Poets and Quants. And I'll be sure to link to that article on this podcast so you can get his written thoughts. But one thing you mentioned in that article, Dean, is to really do your research, and I think that's two parts. That's both what you want to do post-MBA and, of course, which schools fit that the best. So on the first part, in terms of what you really want to do, you mentioned that Stanford essay really helped you figure that out, but how did you make that post-MBA career vision more specific? Was it talking to a lot of other people you knew who got MBAs? Was it talking to people in the industry? Was it going to websites? How did you do that?
It was a combination of everything. I would say the biggest thing that impacted me was I started looking at the people who were in the roles that I wanted to be in 5, 10, 15 years from now. And I looked at how they got to where they were and what skills I needed to get there. So I talked to, obviously, MBA students, to MBA alumni, and to mentors throughout my career. But the focus of it was I found people that looked like what I wanted to look like in 5, 10, 15 years. And I sort of did an assessment of what skills am I missing in order to get there. So it was a lot of just modeling my actions around other people.
I think that's fantastic, fantastic advice. And I wish more applicants would do that. It's a great tip. Did your career goals, were they more specific than supply chain and industry and consulting? Like, how specific were you with that vision?
Where possible, I tried to get real specific, but I think I have a little bit of an advantage in that supply chain isn't an industry that is highly sought after. I feel like there are a lot of people who go into MBA programs with other degrees, and I think wanting to go into supply chain management differentiated me a little bit.
Absolutely. So let's get to that second part now. So you've done your research on where you want to be. You've spoken to people, 10, 15 years down the road that you want to be like and how they got there and what skills you need. Now, how do you find schools that best fit those goals? When you first came to Touch MBA, you were looking at Stanford, HBS, MIT, Kellogg, tough schools to get into. And you stuck with those and you ended up applying to all of those, right, in round 1.
Yep.
And you were planning to apply to Emory, Georgia Tech, and either Duke, Fuqua, or Tuck in round 2. Could you just share what that journey was like in terms of picking those schools for those rounds, why you decided on those schools originally, and then looking back in hindsight, what you would have done if you could have done it again?
Absolutely. So the first thing, honestly, that led me to, before I even started looking at different schools, was I got my GMAT score and my resume in line. To me, those are sort of the two key elements that you're not going to change a ton once you start the application process. So I knew my GMAT score and I knew my resume. I rated, I got a 750 on the GMAT, which is very good in comparison to what the top schools are looking for. And if I had sort of self-graded my resume, I probably would have rated myself somewhere slightly above average, but not a spectacular resume by any means. Mm-hmm. And so using that, I sort of assessed, okay, what tier of schools can I reasonably expect to get into? So that was sort of my first step was, can I reasonably expect to get to first round schools, or am I just going to end up wasting a ton of my time applying to schools that I don't really have a chance to get into? So that was sort of my first strategy was what tier was I targeting? What type of schools was I targeting getting into? And then my strategy was in the first round, I want to apply to those top tier schools where I could legitimately see myself going and that would help me achieve the career goals that I wanted to get to. I can talk through some of the schools in general, but I think the two interesting ones there, Stanford and HBS, are both amazing schools all around. And part of me said with a 750, I have to try to get into these schools because they're both spectacular schools.
Sure. Yeah.
Let's see what happens. I sort of think MIT Sloan is a great school in terms of supply chain management, and Kellogg is sort of a great school and is known for kind of the opposite of that, the soft side of marketing. When I was evaluating my skills, I said, hey, I could use more depth of experience in supply chain management that MIT Sloan provides, but I also knew that some of the softer skills were areas where I had weaknesses, and so I felt like both of those schools would position me to either build on my strengths or fill in some of my weaknesses.
Okay, so a couple questions unpacking what you just said. In terms of figuring out where you'd be competitive, because the application process is so grueling and tough to waste all that time and effort if you don't have a chance. How did you kind of get a gauge on that?
To be honest, after, like I said, evaluating the GMAT and the resume, I said, hey, I think based on what I have here, I think I have a chance at getting into the sort of the top tier schools, the M7, and I think I definitely have a very good chance at getting sort of into the Emory, Georgia Tech, Fuqua type schools. My original thought was, hey, let me take the first round and go after all the schools that if I get in, I would for sure go there because they're spectacular programs.
Interesting. And then in terms of perceptions, in terms of MIT Sloan, it's top ranked for supply chain management. It's known for that. Kellogg, of course, the softer courses marketing. Did you find that during your research that those perceptions matched up to your research?
To be honest, not really. At every school, especially at these top tier schools, there are people at Kellogg who are spectacular at supply chain management, and there are people at MIT Sloan who are spectacular at marketing. So as a whole, MIT Sloan may be better than Kellogg at supply chain management, but I found that within any of these schools, there were pockets of people who were very good, and no matter what school I got into as far as those four went, I was going to be able to get a spectacular education, build a spectacular network, and just great people to learn from.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point. I asked that question because the finance schools get pegged as Columbia and Booth, and the marketing school is, Kellogg. I think while these quote-unquote stereotypes have some element of truth to them, I think it's really important that applicants do go a step further and really look at professors, the students, the resources, the centers of research to really understand whether, like you said, you can achieve that post-MBA goal that you set out in mind. And I think in your case, maybe it might have helped you, right? That you're this supply chain nerd guru, and that's what you want to do. And maybe Kellogg doesn't get as many of those types of applicants.
That definitely made a difference as far as, when I was initially doing the application process, I was thinking, hey, what can these schools do for me? To some extent, that's the decision process I need to go through. But one thing that I hadn't considered, honestly, until I started getting rejections and acceptance letters was the opposite. What can I really bring to these schools? Which, from my perspective, is a very tough question for an applicant to ask because They
Yeah.
haven't been in the shoes of an admissions counselor.
Exactly.
But I found that when I was getting information back from Kellogg, I was trying to get as much feedback as I could, and I think they recognized that I brought a skill set that Kellogg had less of than MIT, HBS, and Stanford.
Such a good point. So I really like the John F. Kennedy's quote: "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." I think that more applicants should use that same quote for their MBA programs. If you can figure out, ask not what your MBA program can do for you, but what you can do for your MBA program. And if you have that attitude in mind, man, you can really do a lot more damage. So let's talk about your choices, or school choices in terms of rounds. So you applied to these heavyweight schools in round one, and congratulations again, you were accepted into Kellogg. So did you find that out before you applied to your round two schools?
Yes, I did. I actually didn't end up applying to any of my round two schools because I got into Kellogg, and I said, hey, with the scholarship I got with Kellogg, to be honest, even if I hadn't gotten a scholarship at Kellogg, I knew I would have gone there, and that's sort of why I broke those schools into round one and round two. When I was doing my application process, I said, hey, I'm going to apply to all of these schools in round one, and if I get into any of them, I'm going there.
But in hindsight, you would have mixed those up a bit, correct?
Yeah, I felt like in applying to all of those schools in round one, I had some coworkers and peers who were applying to a number of different schools, and they got the opportunity to compare offers of getting scholarships at sort of second-tier schools like Emory, Fuqua Tuck, to getting into Kellogg. I didn't get that opportunity, and I probably, in retrospect, should have gone in and done more research on the Stanford and HBS and cut one of those out and added in an Emory or a Fuqua or something like that.
It's true that you improve your scholarship chances by applying in the earlier rounds, round one or round two, generally, for most schools. And so I think that's a really interesting point, is to perhaps mix up your schools. Definitely have your top one or two, say that was MIT and Kellogg in that first round, but then throw in another school that is perhaps relatively easier to get into, where you might win some scholarship funding. So I think that's a really interesting point. Let me ask you this question. Which was the first application you finished?
I believe I finished HBS first.
HBS first. Do you feel like your applications to other schools got better the more applications you completed, or do you feel like they got worse? Or
I felt like they got significantly better throughout the process.
Yeah, that was a setup question, but yeah. So could you explain that?
Just going through the application process, all of the schools, they have different applications, but at the end of the day, they're asking the same question. What can you bring to us? What are you looking for from us? And in going through the first two applications, I felt like I was starting to get an answer to that question, and by the third and the fourth applications that I finished, I really felt like I knew what they were looking for, and I knew what I brought to the table, and I could better put that in the context of the questions they asked.
And that's been my experience too, working with applicants, is that by the third or fourth application, you're kind of on top of your game. Like, you know your story really well, not just for your applications, but also for your interviews. And we can get into that later, but one other point you mentioned was your recommenders. So if you're applying to 8 schools and you're asking your boss and maybe a client or someone else to write your second recommendation, that's a lot of recommendations to write.
Yeah.
Were your recommenders like, come on, Dean, like 4 schools first round, this is a lot of work?
Well, I was fortunate enough to have really great recommenders, and I needed all 4 of those schools only requested 2 recommendations. And so I had 2 guys who I had worked a ton with who I knew would tell my story very well. I asked them to do all 4 recommendations and obviously gave them tons of advance notice. And I believe they put together great recommendations for me. The thing I hadn't considered, and fortunately it didn't come back to haunt me, was I hadn't considered how difficult it would be for them to complete recommendations. The first 4 I had, and actually it turns out that one of those 2 applications had the same recommender questions. So out of those first sort of 3 sets of questions they asked, they were real happy to do that. I think if I'd have asked them to fill out 3 more different sets of questions in round 2, either they would have said, come on, Dean, you're being unrealistic here. Like, this is crazy. You're asking me to do a lot of work. or the quality of it would have suffered. In retrospect, I probably should have mixed up my recommenders a little bit so that if I hadn't gotten into one of those 4 schools, I hadn't burned out my recommenders.
Yeah, I mean, did you bring your recommenders, like all your application recommendation forms at once, or how did you do that?
Actually, for each of my schools, I gave them a sheet of paper that said, this is my story for this school, and this is the story that I'm telling. This is the story that I'd like you to tell, and here are the questions they're going to ask you. And I sent that information to them months in advance with the deadlines and all that sort of stuff so that they were well prepared and could. I didn't want to prevent them from putting time into it. I wanted to let them put as much time as they were willing to put into my applications.
That's great, and I think that's definitely the approach applicants should take. Do not go get your recommendations, with 2 weeks before the application deadline, or even 1 week. You also made some recommendations in your article that I'd like to talk a little more about. One was, don't set expectations too high.
Yeah. What I found, and I completely didn't anticipate this, was I had a lot of friends, coworkers. You're going to talk with a lot of people about the application process. You're going to talk with your recommenders. You're going to talk with your family, your friends. I have a spouse that I talk with a lot. And these people, when you're going through the application process, they likely don't understand, hey, that these are schools I want to get into. And I felt like they associated, okay, Dean's applying to Stanford and Harvard and Kellogg and MIT. He's going to get into all of these. And I think that was something I hadn't anticipated, that they would assume that. And then you sort of have to come back at the end of the story and tell them, no, I didn't get into those schools, which is a real painful conversation to have, especially when you've got a rejection letter in hand.
Yeah, I don't mean to laugh at that lightly, but it's more that, yeah, it's tough for both sides.
Yeah, you just gotta be prepared for anything.
Exactly. And then another one you mentioned is don't focus on the number. So this I found interesting. You think that your GMAT, your resume, essay, and interview are all somewhat equally weighted. So just because you have, a great 750 GMAT score as you did, doesn't mean you're getting into every school.
Yeah, just because the GMAT is the GMAT is by far the easiest way to compare applicants. Any of these schools could go in there and build a class based on high GMATs. And they don't do that because it's not the best way to build a class. And so that was one thing that I found was the GMAT's an easy way to compare people's applications, but it is by far not the only one. The resume and essays and fit into the program all factor into the admissions counselor's decisions. And I think that's something that a lot of people lost focus on. I found that when I went to MBA fairs and stuff like that everybody was asking about the GMAT score, and
Sure.
Nobody was asking what qualities are you looking at as students? What type of resumes are you looking for? And I felt like all the focus was on the number that was easy to compare, and the other 2 elements of your application are just as important, if not more important.
Absolutely. And I think in general, having sat on the other side of the desk as an admissions director, the higher ranked the school, the I don't want to say it's less important, but the more you have to bring out those other elements of your application, right? Because the competition is so high. There's so many people with great GMAT scores. That's more to get your foot in the door. But then the other parts of your application are really what's going to get you through that door. So I think well, Dean, you're definitely a supply chain guy because you've broken down the process down pretty well. One more question is, you mentioned talking to your peers. So I found this recommendation pretty interesting. How did you talk to your peers, and why do you think that helped you during the process?
Through the process, I had 2 of my coworkers were going through the same process at the same time as me to similar schools. And then I had another 2 coworkers who were going through similar processes but applying to different schools. And I found that talking to those guys and understanding where they were applying, why they were applying there, was incredibly helpful because I was able to find out from them, hey, how did you handle this question? And in a lot of cases, their natural answer to a question was way better than my natural answer. And so I was able to say, okay, you're clearly thinking about this a completely different way. And I was able to get a different perspective. So the networks I sort of got were my coworkers, and I was able to get their perspective. And then I found that in going to information sessions from different schools, you run into the same people over and over again. And I was able to meet and talk with a number of those people. And I found that they had a different perspective as well. And we all came from areas where we had different resources as well. One of my friends ended up paying for an admissions counselor, and she was applying to Kellogg as well. And it worked out great because, when she went in for the interview and the admissions counselor had lots of advice for how to handle the interview, she just passed that along to me. And, when I was hearing back from Kellogg, I was sharing with her, hey, here's where I am in the process. Here's what my essays look like. And I had an opportunity to give and receive information from them. That's actually the way I found out about Touch MBA. Was one of my coworkers shot an email out to everybody and said, hey, I tried this and it worked out really well and I thought it was really helpful.
Yeah, I think that's so important to not apply in a vacuum. And so many applicants end up doing that. Or maybe they're reading like forums, Beat the GMAT or GMAT Club. But I think that's such a good point. Now, whether you do it with your colleagues, your friends, or, I think it's good to get the advice or opinions of people who have gone through the process as well. But however you do it, definitely get more eyes on your application, talk to more people about your story and their stories. Just a shameless plug. I've tried to create a community for this and a course so that applicants can do this, so that they don't apply in the vacuum and they can learn from people that have gone through the process. And that's at touchmba.com/course. That's exactly what I'm trying to do there. But, if you can do it with your colleagues or friends, bosses, whoever it is, just get more eyes on your application. Okay, I've belabored the point.
One other thing that I just thought was really helpful there is when you're building that network, focus on people who have applied or are going to apply to an MBA. I've found that other people may have input on, hey, the grammar of your essay should look like this. Your story is kind of strange. And the people who haven't applied to an MBA may give you that kind of feedback. And you want to be able to filter out, hey, I do kind of want my story to be a little strange. I don't want to look like all the other applicants. So I would definitely say weight the feedback you get from people who are going through or have gone through the process that you're going through.
Great stuff. So any last tips you'd like to give to our listeners? I mean, what a journey for you, and congratulations again. But any last tips?
I guess the only thing I would say is expect the unexpected. If you'd asked me the day I heard back from MIT and Kellogg, I would have told you I thought I did great on MIT's application and I thought I did really bad on Kellogg's application. And it turns out the complete opposite was true. I just say expect the unexpected and try your best on every application, because who knows which admissions counselor is going to read your application and something is going to click, and which one is going to read your application and just not like your writing style or be having a bad day.
Yeah, to that point, when you're applying to these top schools, I generally recommend most applicants to apply to at least 5. 6, 7 is maybe ideal, but because you just never know. You can have a good idea of whether you have a good chance, but even then, maybe that year there's 40 other people with similar backgrounds as you applying, right? So I think that's a really good tip. Dean, thank you so much for your time, and all of us, we wish you the best of luck on your MBA journey, and maybe we can have you back on the podcast after your first year.
Yeah, no problem. And best of luck to everybody else who's applying. Like I said, leverage that network and go out there and get into some great schools.
And Dean has generously volunteered to answer questions. If you guys have any more questions for Dean, just ask them in the comments and Dean will respond to you. So thanks again, Dean.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Touch MBA podcast. Don't be shy. We have a mailing list. Go to touchmba.com and get yourself signed up. And we'll keep you posted with the best tips and insider interviews on how to get into your #1 school. You can also find us on Twitter and Facebook at Touch MBA. See you soon.